7. Signs you're the rare gatekeeper, chosen one of the dark dimension. There are mysteries most people will never touch because they walk only in the safe, familiar corridors of light. They live as if the spiritual world is made only of angels, blessings, and gentle awakenings. But you and I know that isn't the whole story. There is another reality, a darker current that flows alongside the light, one that few souls are even capable of entering. And among all seekers, there exists an even rarer role, the gatekeeper, chosen one of the dark dimension. To be chosen as a gatekeeper means you are not just a traveler between worlds, you are the one who stands at the threshold itself, holding the line between chaos and order, between shadow and illumination. The power of this role is immense, and so are its burdens. When you are the gatekeeper, you are marked. You carry signs within your soul and in your life that others may misinterpret as curses, misfortune, or strangeness. But these signs are not punishments. They are confirmations. They prove you have been entrusted with a role that terrifies most, because only those who can withstand the weight of shadow can guard the doorway to higher truth. And if you are hearing these words with a deep, almost unsettling recognition, then perhaps it is because some part of you already knows you might be one of them.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
The first sign that you are the rare gatekeeper is that you have always felt different, even when you were young. Not just different in taste or personality, but different in essence. You carried a heaviness others didn't, or perhaps an intensity that made people uncomfortable. Children around you may have felt uneasy, adults may have whispered that you were too much, and you may have grown up wondering why your very presence seemed to stir reactions in people. This difference is not random. It is the mark of someone who stands at the threshold. A gatekeeper's energy cannot blend seamlessly into the crowd because their vibration is designed to disrupt illusions. Have you noticed how you cannot pretend to be shallow even when you try? How your very existence often exposes lies people tell themselves? That is the power of the first sign. The second sign is your strange relationship with darkness itself. Most people avoid darkness. They escape it, deny it, or panic in its presence. But you, even if unwilling at first, have been forced to walk into it. Maybe it came as trauma, maybe through nights of despair, maybe through brushes with forces you could not explain. And instead of being destroyed, you emerged with eyes that could see more than before. For you, darkness is not merely an enemy, it is a language you have been made fluent in. You understand its grammar, its traps, its whispers, and because you understand it, you cannot be deceived in the way others can. That fluency is the gift of the gatekeeper. Ask yourself, how many times have you endured shadows that would have broken someone else, and yet you walked out stronger, stranger, more awake? The third sign is the intensity of your inner battles. Gatekeepers are never given an easy path. You may have noticed that your struggles seem heavier, your temptations fiercer, your doubts louder. It often feels like you are wrestling invisible forces while others stroll through life unbothered. But this is not because you are weak. It is because you are on the front lines. A gatekeeper is not tested once or twice. They are tested constantly because the doorway they guard must always be watched. Every time you survive those battles, your strength multiplies and your vibration sharpens. And the hidden truth is this: The reason life tests you so relentlessly is because your victories do not belong to you alone. They ripple outward, strengthening the entire grid of souls that depend on your gate. Have you realized that when you overcome something in yourself, others around you suddenly feel lighter too? That is not coincidence. That is the gatekeeper's burden and gift. The fourth sign is your paradoxical role as both outcast and magnet. People may reject you, misunderstand you, even fear you. At the same time, there are others who are inexplicably drawn to you, seeking your counsel, your energy, your presence, even if they don't fully understand why. It's as if you repel and attract simultaneously. This is because the gatekeeper's vibration acts like a mirror. It reflects people's hidden selves back to them. Some cannot bear it, so they flee. Others crave it, so they cling. And you, caught in the middle, often feel alone, as if no one truly sees you. But the truth is, this tension is a sign of your calling. For only a gatekeeper can embody both shadow and light in such a way that people's souls are forced to reveal themselves. The fifth sign is your uncanny awareness of cycles. You notice patterns others overlook, the way energies rise and fall, the hidden threads of fate, the recurring lessons in people's lives. You may dream of events before they happen, or sense when change is near. You might not always know the details, but you know when a threshold is approaching. This is the gatekeeper's gift of foresight. Because you stand at the door, you feel when it is about to open or close. And while others stumble blindly, you already sense the turning of the tide. Think about it. How many times have you been accused of being too intense, only to later realize you were right all along? The sixth sign is your deep connection with paradox. Most people want simple answers, good or bad, light or dark, right or wrong. But you know it is never that simple. You feel the truth in contradictions. You see how darkness can heal, how pain can transform, how endings can be beginnings. This is not confusion. It is mastery. Gatekeepers understand paradox because they live in the in-between, where opposites collide, and this perspective is what allows you to guide others across thresholds they fear. The seventh and final sign is your endurance. No matter how much life breaks you, you rise. No matter how deep the pit, you climb. You may have scars, but you also have resilience most can't imagine. That resilience is not just for you, it is proof that you are the kind of soul who can hold the gate against any storm. And when you finally realize that your endurance was not accidental but intentional, you begin to understand the full weight of your role. Now the question becomes, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you continue to see your life as random hardship, or will you embrace the possibility that you are a rare gatekeeper, chosen to guard the most dangerous, most sacred threshold of all? Because once you recognize the signs, you can never unsee them. And with recognition comes responsibility. This is only the beginning of the journey. The real revelation is yet to come. Because if you truly are a gatekeeper, then you must understand why the dark dimension even exists and what role you play in balancing the entire spiritual order, the hidden engine, why the dark dimension exists and why only gatekeepers can control its power. We must begin by admitting something most spiritual teachers avoid. The dark dimension is not a mistake, not an enemy realm to be eradicated, and not a metaphysical garbage dump. It exists because the cosmos requires polarity to generate movement, intelligence, and evolution. Light without shadow is static. it becomes a gilded stagnation. The dark dimension is the engine that produces contrast, urgency, and transformation. It contains the raw, unrefined energies, pressure, resistance, desire, decay, that when skillfully stewarded, catalyze growth across entire worlds. If you are the gatekeeper, you are stationing yourself next to that engine, not to worship its ferocity, but to translate its output into constructive force. That is why it must be contained and directed. Unchecked, its currents tear. Contained, they forge. Practically speaking, the dark dimension functions like a pressure chamber for souls. Pressure alone does not create value, it reveals latent capacities. Imagine a seed under the weight of soil. Without the compression and the darkness, it won't crack open into a shoot. The dark dimension applies pressure to systems and individuals, revealing what is brittle and what is resilient. Your role as gatekeeper is to judge which pressures are necessary and which are catastrophic. This is not an abstract duty, it is a daily calibration. You learn to sense thresholds, how much strain a person, lineage, or community can hold before the system shatters, versus when it will transmute into higher form. This skill is rare because it demands both compassion and cold clarity. Why only gatekeepers can control this power? Because controlling darkness requires two apparently contradictory capacities: the ability to hold immense intensity without being consumed, and the capacity to wield tenderness so that pressure becomes healing rather than harm. Most souls tend to one pole. Either they become armored and domineering, or they become porous and are swept away. Gatekeepers develop a third way, an adaptive field that flexes under force yet always recenters to purpose. You have probably experienced this in microcosm. You withstand more grief than those around you, but you also know how to turn your suffering into service. Others can glimpse it and call it heroism. You know it as a practiced skill. There is also an ecological reason the dark dimension exists, and this is crucial for your ethics as a gatekeeper. The universe balances. If you remove all darkness, life becomes thin and brittle. The species that survive would be the passive and untested. Conversely, if darkness runs wild, thriving becomes impossible. Gatekeepers are the ecological stewards of initiation, deciding when to open a crucible so a being is refined, and when to close it so the being can integrate. This distinguishes you from those who seek power for drama or control. Your use of the dark must be reparative. It must aim at restoring equilibrium, not amplifying imbalance. How do you practically steward such power without falling into pride or cruelty? First, cultivate internal sovereignty. Your judgment must rest in your soul, not in applause or fear. Daily practices that strengthen this include boundary meditations, somatic return, listening to how stress shows in your body, and ritualized clearing so you do not carry unresolved accumulations. Second, develop relational accountability. Gatekeeping is never a solo monarchy, it is a covenant. Keep trusted allies, people or teachers who can speak truth to you and hold you accountable when your field gets warped. Third, practice graduated initiation. When you introduce pressure, do it incrementally and observe outcomes. Initiation is about the threshold, not the blow. Finally, ask yourself the hardest question of all. Will you use the dark to sharpen your compassion or to harden your dominion? The difference is the fulcrum between a tyrant and a guardian. If you choose compassion, you will learn how to translate suffering into skill, force into form, and chaos into craft. If you choose dominion, the dark will mirror back a worse shadow, a gatekeeper turned jailer. The cosmos will not punish you for testing. It will mirror your chosen intent. The 7 trials that prove you are the gatekeeper of shadows. If the first signs awaken the suspicion that you are different, and the second revelation explains why the dark dimension exists, the next stage is the most personal, the trials. Every true gatekeeper endures 7 distinct ordeals that serve as proof. These are not random hardships, but sacred initiations. They arrive uninvited. They often feel unbearable, but each one strips away a layer of illusion until you stand naked in your essence. And only those who survive these trials can be entrusted with the doorway between dimensions. The first trial is the trial of isolation. There comes a moment in your life when everyone seems to vanish. Friends no longer understand you, mentors fail to guide you, even the divine feels silent. You may sit in your room at night and feel the crushing weight of being alone in a universe that has abandoned you. This loneliness is not punishment, it is a test. It asks, will you cling to noise for comfort, or will you discover the presence that exists even in silence? Those who pass this trial discover that true strength is self-sourced, and that is the foundation of a gatekeeper's sovereignty. The second trial is the confrontation with temptation. For gatekeepers, temptations do not come as trivial desires, but as profound invitations to misuse power. You may be offered opportunities to dominate others, to exploit shadows for personal gain, to manipulate hearts and minds with your insight. The temptation whispers, no one will know and you deserve it. But the trial demands restraint. Power withheld is power sanctified. If you can hold that force without abusing it, you prove you can channel the dark without becoming consumed by it. The third trial is the dance with fear. Gatekeepers do not face ordinary fears. They face primal terrors. You may feel stalked by unseen presences, plagued by nightmares, or confronted with experiences that shatter your rational mind. The question is not, can you avoid fear, but can you walk with it? Passing this trial means that fear becomes your compass, not your prison. And when you no longer flinch at shadows, the dark dimension respects you as one of its own. The fourth trial is despair. This is the moment when you lose all meaning. The things that once inspired you crumble, leaving behind a hollow void. Nothing satisfies, nothing motivates. It is the trial of emptiness, and many souls do not survive it. But if you endure despair long enough, you uncover a hidden truth. Meaning is not given from outside, it is generated from within. Gatekeepers who survive despair become unshakable because no external collapse can erase the inner fire they discovered in the void. The fifth trial is betrayal. At some point, those you trust most will wound you, whether through abandonment, deception, or cruelty. This betrayal cuts deeper than any stranger's harm because it forces you to confront whether you will harden your heart or expand it. Many gatekeepers are born when they choose forgiveness, not as naive trust, but as the decision to remain open despite pain. Passing this trial means you can stand guard at the gate without bitterness, because you no longer confuse love with control. The sixth trial is the burden of vision. Gatekeepers see what others cannot: cycles of fate, patterns of destruction, the subtle rot hiding beneath appearances. This sight is not always a gift, it can feel like a curse. You might see tragedy before it arrives, or sense corruption others refuse to acknowledge. The trial is whether you will collapse under the weight of knowing, or whether you will bear the burden with integrity. If you endure, you learn to speak the truth with timing and compassion, transforming vision into guidance. The seventh trial is endurance, the long test of time. Unlike the others, it is not dramatic but relentless. The gatekeeper's life rarely offers prolonged ease. There will always be new waves of resistance, new demands, new initiations. The trial asks, can you keep going? Not for a day, not for a season, but for a lifetime. This is why scars mark every true gatekeeper. But those scars are not signs of weakness. They are seals of authority. Now pause and ask yourself, how many of these trials have you already faced? Which one is pressing on you right now? And can you shift your perspective to see it not as random suffering, but as proof of your rare role? Because once you reframe your hardships as sacred trials, you stop cursing your path and start mastering it. This is why only a handful ever become gatekeepers. The trials do not select for talent, beauty, or intelligence. They select for endurance, humility, integrity, and truth. And those who pass are the ones who can stand before the dark dimension and not waver. The next revelation will pierce even deeper, because it is not enough to recognize signs or survive trials. You must understand your function in the grand cosmic order. The question is not just who you are, but what you are meant to do with this role. The cosmic duty of the gatekeeper, how you hold the balance of light and dark for the entire world. To recognize yourself as the rare gatekeeper of the dark dimension is one thing. To understand what that truly demands of you is another. It is no small identity to claim. It is a cosmic duty, a responsibility that stretches far beyond your personal life, far beyond your family, your career, even your generation. It is about holding the line where few dare to stand, the resurthin boundary where light and dark converge, clash, and transform each other. The reason this role is so sacred is because light and dark are not enemies in the way we've been taught. They are forces, polarities of creation. Light illuminates, reveals, nurtures, expands. Darkness conceals, compresses, destroys, refines. Alone, each one would distort existence. Too much light, and nothing would have form. Everything would dissolve into blinding sameness. Too much darkness, and everything would collapse into paralysis. But together they generate movement, growth, and meaning. That delicate dance requires guardians, beings who can witness both forces without bias and prevent one from devouring the other. This is where you come in. Gatekeeper does not worship light or shadow exclusively. A gatekeeper honors the marriage between them. That means you will often feel misunderstood. Light seekers may accuse you of being too dark, too willing to look into the abyss. Dark dwellers may accuse you of betrayal because you refuse to let shadow consume the world unchecked. But that is the essence of your duty, to stand between, to absorb attacks from both sides, to remain steady when others cling to extremes. Can you feel the gravity of that? Can you sense why this path is not given to many? Practically, this duty shows up in subtle ways. When chaos erupts in your life or in the lives around you, you often feel compelled to hold space. While others panic, you feel an inner voice saying, "Stay calm, anchor here." That's not just personality, it's function. The gatekeeper stabilizes energetic thresholds. When people around you are drowning in despair, You carry the capacity to remind them of light. When others are blinded by naive positivity, you are the one to whisper about shadow so they don't collapse unprepared. In both cases, you are balancing the scales. Your duty also unfolds in choices. Every decision you make is magnified, not only for you but for those connected to your field. When you resist corruption, you shift timelines. When you speak truth, you break illusions that could enslave others. When you forgive betrayal, you release patterns that might have trapped entire bloodlines. You might not see the ripples immediately, but they extend far, shaping unseen dimensions. And that is why the trials you endured were so merciless. They trained you for this weight. Another dimension of your duty is initiation. Gatekeepers are natural initiators. Your presence alone awakens others, often against their will. A conversation with you might leave someone shaken, as if you've stripped away their excuses. That's not arrogance, it's vibration. Because you've stood in both dark and light, your energy triggers hidden shadows in others. If they're ready, they'll grow. If they're not, they may hate you. This too is part of your role. Gatekeepers are not here to be liked. They are here to be true. Yet perhaps the deepest layer of your duty is compassion. The more you integrate the paradox of light and dark, the more your heart expands beyond judgment. You stop seeing demons as only evil or angels as flawless. You see them as roles within the cosmic play. You see humans not as sinners or saints, but as souls navigating thresholds. And from that perspective, your compassion grows vast, unshakable. This compassion is not weak. It is forged in fire. It allows you to guide without condemning, to discipline without cruelty, to love without illusion. Now let me ask you something you may not have asked yourself yet. Do you truly want this responsibility? Because to embrace your duty as a gatekeeper is to surrender the comfort of fitting in, of being neutral, of living a life only for yourself. You will be tested again and again, but in exchange you gain a freedom others never touch, the freedom of wholeness, the freedom of seeing reality as it is, not as we wish it to be. If you accept this role, your life becomes both heavier and lighter. Heavier because the stakes of your choices ripple across worlds. Lighter because you no longer waste energy fighting what is. You stand in harmony with both creation and destruction, and therefore nothing can truly threaten you. You realize that being a gatekeeper is not about fearlessly conquering the dark or blindly serving the light. It is about embodying the bridge between them so that balance, the rarest treasure of all, can endure. So the final question rests with you. When you look at your scars, your visions, your endless battles with shadow, can you see them not as accidents, but as seals of initiation? When you remember the times you wanted to collapse but rose anyway, can you now honor them as proof that you were chosen? And when you feel the world pulling you to extremes, will you stand in the middle, steady, unmovable, holding the threshold no matter the cost? Because if you can, then you are not only rare, you are essential. You are the gatekeeper of the dark dimension, and the balance of light and shadow in this world depends on your courage to remain at your post. This is your cosmic duty, your hidden calling, and your ultimate destiny.